Listen, nobody is perfect. You're not perfect. I'm certainly not perfect, but this keyboard right here is also not perfect. But what it is a 60% keyboard with mechanical switches, per key RGB, and the ability to use it in both wired as well as low latency wireless mode for gaming. And it came with two surprise features that caught me completely off guard. But really what sells it is the fact that you can get all of this for less than $35. Now you're a bit intrigued. Now you want to know about it. I want to tell you about it. Let's get into it. Okay, we'll start off with design and build quality. First of all, it's a 60% keyboard, meaning you don't have that numpad, you don't have the arrow keys, you don't have the function keys on top, and you don't have that home, page up, page down cluster over here. What you do have is all that functionality just overlapped onto the normal keyboard, and then you've got function layers. We'll talk about that in just a second. Now, as for the build quality, check that out. No flex whatsoever. I mean, my Ducky 1.2 Mini, which is a $120 something keyboard, has more flex than this. This is built rock solid, and it's going to be good for gaming, normal usage, and perhaps even travel. More on that in a bit. Now the whole thing is just all plastic, no metal here for obvious reasons. Now when it first came, the keys seemed to have a decent amount of torque to them, but after about a week of usage, they do seem to be moving towards the clackier side of things. Still nothing too bad, just that the keys clang a little bit when they bottom out, and that the keys are a little bit loud. Obviously you're not going to expect lubed and dampened switches at this price point. There is also a wobble to every key. Nothing too noticeable except in the largest of keys, but really in normal usage, it didn't really seem to bother me any. Pressing down on each of these keys does reveal a little bit of chalkiness, meaning there's a little bit of friction that might go away with repeated use over time, or it might stay the same way. You could of course modify them, and that brings me to surprise feature number 1. Not only are the keycaps interchangeable, the switches themselves are hot swappable, which is something I really did not expect at this price point. You can go ahead and change them to blues or browns or whatever you might fancy, as long as they fit the interface. The ones I got were the red keys, which I like, and they hold true to their name. They're smooth, they're linear, and they're relatively quiet. Now the font on the keycaps is elegant, it's simple, and I like it that way. Thankfully there's no gamer aesthetic, and therefore it's inoffensive, and at this price point I am more than happy with that. Now I did mention they come with per key RGB, and while it's not the brightest RGB in town, it's still bright enough to hold its own in all but the brightest of rooms. But I will say that they diffuse very beautifully on the keyboard, and honestly it looks quite elegant. Me likey. Now there are a number of patterns you can cycle through, and there is some customizability as well in terms of brightness using the function and arrow keys and the color itself. Now my favorite setting is the one where every time you touch a key, it just glows for a bit and fades away. Now as for connectivity, you can either plug it in through USB-C and it works as a normal wired keyboard, or you can turn this switch on and remove that USB-C plug and it'll go into wireless mode. And the way you pair it is you use these 3 switches, Q, W, and E, and that is where surprise number 2 comes in. This keyboard can actually pair to 3 different devices and swap between them on the fly, which is again something I just didn't expect at this price point. Here's how you do that. You turn on the keyboard, you press function and Q and hold it down for a few seconds until the Q starts blinking. Once it starts blinking, you go to the device you want to pair it to and you add it as a normal Bluetooth device, as you would. Repeat this process with W and E and 2 different devices, and it'll save those 3 devices on its onboard memory. Say you've got this paired to your PC, your laptop, and your tablet, and you want to swap between them. Just press the function key along with either Q, W, or E for a second, and it'll just swap to that device, and that's it. That's all there is to it. It actually does work that seamlessly. Now as for low latency gaming, the latency was definitely low enough that an average player like me, even in an esports title like Apex Legends, which I play quite often, it felt perfectly normal. Between the low latency wireless mode and the 3 devices that are stored on board in its memory that you can hot swap to, this is perfect for both gaming and productivity, and that is frankly astonishing. And while we're talking about its usability, we've got to talk about its function layers. On the first layer, you've got all your letters and numbers, of course, but you'll see on the legends there's a secondary function to some of these buttons as well. But on the numbers on top, you'll see there are two secondary functions. You've got the function layer from F1 to F12, and then you've got some media controls. And the way you switch between them is you press your function and your left control, and it changes the layout of the keyboard completely. The problem is some of the layouts it changes to make no sense. Like the first layout is just your basic keyboard layout, right? You won't have any of the function keys available. You won't have any of the home, page up, page down keys available unless you press the function button and then press those keys. The second function layer actually gives you the function keys on top instead of the number keys, and then gives you that home, insert, page up, page down cluster, but without those letters. But the other letters work at the same time. This makes no sense to me. Like, who uses it like that? Honestly, the best way to use this is use it on the basic function layer and then press function and enter, which will activate these 4 arrow keys. So you'll have the arrow keys as well as the normal keyboard layout. And if all that sounds a little bit complicated, I don't blame you. It is a bit complicated, needlessly so. I think this could have definitely been thought out a little better. Even having just another button combo to just access that second layer without changing the entire layout would have been just fine. Now, as for actual usability, I found this to be just fine for my gaming as well as my productivity needs. But what's more is it was small enough but strong enough that I could carry it with me while traveling. Now, while you're traveling, you'd be worried about battery life. Rightfully so. It's only a 200 milliampere battery. But in my usage, I used just the basic RGB. That is to say, I had that one setting where every key I typed just would glow and then disappear, and that's it. I used it for about a week with about 4-5 hours of usage every day. At least 3 of those hours were in playing video games. So with that kind of usage, it still lasted for a good 7 days. So if you use it on a, say, 7-8 hour workday, it should last you Monday through Friday, no problems. Now, if you haven't used the keyboard for about 5 minutes, it goes to sleep on its own. Pressing any key will wake it up as well. So that helps in saving battery a little bit. And what's more, if you turn off RGB, you'll probably get a little more battery life overall. It is worth noting that at the end of 7 days, it wasn't dead. It was just giving me an indication that said battery was low. So let me get this straight. You get a 60% keyboard with red linear switches, mechanical switches that happen to be hot swappable as well, with both a wireless and wired mode, where the wireless mode is actually capable of saving 3 different devices and switching them on the fly. Plus it has RGB, per key RGB no less, that is customizable to some extent, and it has a battery that lasts a week without a single charge. That is phenomenal value. Now, there are a few downsides. Like I mentioned, the RGB, it's not the brightest in the world, but it's fine for anything but the brightest room, genuinely. The mechanical switches we talked about, they're not lubed, they're not dampened, but again, given this price, I don't think that's even reasonable to expect. And finally, the function layer. That is the only real downside to this keyboard, is that function layer is a bit complicated, but given everything else that this keyboard is offering you, the fact that it's only $33 and change is astounding to me. This might be the best sub $50 keyboard I've seen out there, and the only sub $35 keyboard I've seen that has this combination of features. I just went on a work trip away from home, and I was away for a week, and I used this keyboard, and it was an absolute treat, which gave me an idea. Given that I travel so much and I like to carry my tech because I like gaming and I like live streaming, that's right, twitch.tv/T0plays, come catch me live playing Apex Legends mostly. I thought I might do not an everyday carry, but a travel carry. So you might want to hit subscribe if you want to see that video. I'll see you in the next one. Stay happy, stay peaceful, stay colorful. Namaste.